Hello everybody, Xander here, and today we're back with another book review. And this is the big final one for December, the last book that I've read in this year. And then after that, we're going to finally get to my annual every book that I've read video, which is pretty exciting. And of course, we're capping off 2024 with A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Now, of course, this was fitting to read for multiple reasons. The biggest one for this month was because it is, of course, winter, and the whole book, could be summarized as winter is coming, as characters say in this book, mostly Ned Stark, specifically. And I've had this book on my shelf for years, and I've never read it in full, so this was my opportunity to do so, capping off the year, and that's what I did. Of course, this is George R.R. Martin's biggest hit, which was also adapted into HBO's most successful TV show of the 21st century, which helped, help revive the fantasy genre a little bit. At that point, this book was released in like the 90s, I believe, and barely anyone read or talked about it until the TV show came out. So you can definitely thank that show for you probably knowing about this book, like me. The plot of it, it's hard to really, perfectly summarize with how much is going on, but for the most part, I can say the plot is, the Stark family, lives in this place called Winterfell, and they're being visited by the Lannister family, who are like rulers of Westeros, which is like this, big part of the Seven Kingdoms. Specifically, the King, Robert Baratheon, is visiting Ned Stark, the main lord of Winterfell, just trying to get back together as their old friends, but also because he wants him to be the sort of assistant to the king and the hand of the king. And while that's happening, there's a lot of power struggle, lots of, drama going on. And almost completely separate from the main story is also the POV of this young girl named Daenerys, who is, the youngest surviving, or the youngest and, I think second surviving member of the Targaryen family who used to rule Westeros before being taken over, and she now has to marry this brutal lord, Khal Drogo, to sort of possibly gain power to try and take back Westeros. So lots of crazy stuff happened in this book. Each chapter is written from a character's point of view, but it's still a third-person, past tense sort of book. And it's a well-written book at that. I was a little intimidated at first because of the amount of pages. This is 600 pages, despite it not looking like it. And there's also some decently small text with some, pretty lengthy paragraphs here and there. But I honestly liked the book, despite all that, because it didn't feel too descriptive, like George was trying to pad out the book. He kind of got to the point while still describing a lot to you. It didn't entirely overstay its welcome, I think. the writing aside, I enjoy the characters. This this is probably one of like the top books that I've read this year that have standout characters, like multiple characters I can point out and say this person was interesting and so forth. Like, I'd say my top favorite characters would be like Tyrion, who's a lot of people's favorite character from what I've heard, Arya, and I'm gonna give my third favorite to like Sam, just because he's kind of a precious guy. I gotta give him credit. He's not in the book that long, but I liked him enough. I would also give an honorable mention to all of the precious direwolves throughout the book. All good doggos in my opinion. And despite having some favorites, there's still some good characters throughout, and just well written ones, because there's definitely characters you hate, but are written so well. Like the Lannister, pretty much most of the Lannisters are bastards, and not in the Jon Snow kind of way. Like Tyrion is the only Lannister who isn't a complete asshole, because King Robert's technically a Baratheon, so I guess it doesn't fully count. And then there's also Catelyn Stark, who is Ned's wife and the mother of most of the Stark children. I say most because Jon Snow, the son of Ned, isn't exactly Catelyn's son. And that's the bastard thing I just mentioned. So this is very much like medieval society, where it's pretty bad to have a child from a person who isn't your wife, though I guess technically even now that's still kind of a hot button thing, but it's especially bad here, especially for royalty. So that is quite a bit of tension for the family. And I'll say this, Catelyn does kind of have reasons to not like Jon. I get that. It's just kind of that thing you think of when you're reading, like, oh, this is stupid, because, she shouldn't blame the child, which is very true. But I guess when you're the person who's basically been cheated on, you just probably can't see past that too much. But I would still say I didn't like her too much because of how far she goes with all of that, and the whole misunderstanding, kind of close to the middle of it with Tyrion, all this stuff that is at least slightly started by her. So there's just kind of that. So just those extra steps to make her not as sympathetic as she could be, because I can see her point of view a little bit. Still an asshole, but not as assholey as the Lannisters. Oh boy. And then I guess in the middle of all of the plot is Jon being a part of this guard called the Night's Watch, who are posted out by this giant ice wall called the Wall. Just kind of protecting Winterfell a bit. So I guess that's kind of a slightly big part of the overall main plot. And like I said, the stuff with Daenerys is pretty small in comparison to everything else going on, but it's still interesting. I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit, but there's just a lot of stuff with this book, but I love it. I love this book. I love the characters, the dialogue, especially with Tyrion. I know everyone's already, talked so much, about Tyrion, but I gotta follow the hype train and say he is a great character and has some great dialogue, especially with Jon. And Jon also has some great dialogue with Arya, like a really lovely brother and sister. And, shining moments throughout this, kind of like a moody medieval story about, political drama. But, yeah, I guess those are my main thoughts on the book. I should get into it before I lose the thoughts. This book is full of stuff that might horribly trigger lots of people, so keep that in mind. There's obviously lots of murder and death. That's pretty much a given with fantasy stories. There's plenty of misogyny here and there, mostly in the form of, like, bringing up gender roles and just the overall theme of them, as well as just some violence towards women. And there's also some sexual assault stuff, so that's not great. Mentions of it mostly, but there are some bits of it like actually happening in the book, which is not pretty good. And some of it is revolved around someone who is a minor by modern definitions, so not really good. So keep that in mind if you decide to read this. There you go. Going back to lighten the mood. If you like a complex, semi-realistic medieval fantasy, then this book should be for you. And good way to cap off the year and start off winter. I'm gonna give a Game of Thrones a 9 out of 10. I think I liked it quite a bit, and I'm willing to give it that rating. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time. Have a happy new year. Take care.